Tonight, I want to share with you a victory, a quiet one, overshadowed by the avalanche of headlines about the Venezuela crisis and looming impeachment trials. But make no mistake, what unfolded on the Senate floor this afternoon marks the first hairline crack in the dam of authoritarianism that has constrained our democracy this past year. Today, the United States Senate, with a decisive block of 12 Republicans breaking ranks, voted to block President Trump's executive takeover of the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Even more striking, a federal court here in the District of Columbia has just levied what legal experts are calling crippling fines against the Trump Organization and the president's personal estate for alleged misuse of federal funds in this attempted seizure, with penalties totaling more than $75 million. I want to take a moment to unpack what this really means. On the surface, it may look like a story about a building, a dispute over real estate and arts funding that the media will likely reduce to Trump loses bid to rename Cultural Center. But this is not about a building. This is about the soul of our nation and about the desperate financial shell game the president has been playing to keep his administration afloat. I'm going to show you what most people don't know about this deal, explain why the president was so fixated on seizing a cultural institution, why the courts hit him with such unprecedented fines, and why the Senate, the very body that has shielded him for so long, finally drew a line in the sand. To make sense of this, we need to examine the timeline. About 3 months ago, shortly after the Department of Government Efficiency began dismantling the National Endowment for the Arts, President Trump quietly signed an executive directive ostensibly framed as an infrastructure revitalization effort. The order claimed the Kennedy Center was failing and in disrepair, a blatant falsehood used to justify immediate executive intervention. But his ambitions went far beyond renovation. He aimed to fundamentally repurpose the institution. His plan called for dissolving the existing Board of Trustees, a bipartisan body established by Congress, and replacing it with a hand-picked council of loyalists, figures like Steve Bannon and Kash Patel, deciding what art is patriotic enough for the American public to see. He proposed renaming the Grand Foyer the Mega Hall of Liberty and replacing educational outreach programs that bring jazz and theater to underprivileged children, with a curriculum centered on 1776 Commission propaganda. This was more than a power play. It was an attempted hostile takeover of American culture. He sought to transform a living memorial to a president who embodied service and intellect into a shrine to his own vanity. This is where corruption crosses the line into crime, and this is what the Senate Intelligence Committee uncovered, prompting today's decisive vote. I've reviewed the financial disclosures. I've seen the proposed contracts. The Kennedy Center revitalization wasn't going to be entrusted to neutral construction firms. Oversight for the project was set to be handled by a shell company operating under the umbrella of World Liberty Financial Crypto Project, a firm linked to the Trump family. The plan was to funnel $400 million of taxpayer money, funds allocated for emergency infrastructure, through this company, effectively paying management fees back into the president's own circle. That is why today's fines are so severe. The court found that preliminary transfers had already begun before congressional approval, a clear violation of the Anti-Deficiency Act, a breach of the separation of powers, and most egregiously, a violation of the public trust. The judge's ruling was sharp and unflinching. The executive branch cannot treat the federal treasury as a personal piggy bank for vanity projects. The $75 million fine is more than a penalty. It is a restitution order, a statement from the judiciary saying, return the money. Now let's turn to what happened in the Senate. For the past year, we've watched Republican senators contort themselves to defend the indefensible, defending the firing of the FBI director, standing by the immigration surveillance program, and remaining almost silent on the war crimes unfolding in Venezuela. So what changed? Why did a group of 12 Republicans join Democrats today to block this takeover? It wasn't because they suddenly fell in love with the performing arts. It was because they smelled weakness. The very weakness I warned you about yesterday. In Washington, power is perception. When the major donors pulled roughly $500 million from Trump's super PACs last month, it sent a clear signal to the establishment that the ship was taking on water. These senators are thinking about the 2026 midterms. They're seeing a president who is cash poor, facing impeachment pressures, and now entangled in legal troubles and financial penalties as his controversial moves at the Kennedy Center draw bipartisan scrutiny. They see a leader who is becoming a liability. By blocking this takeover attempt, the Senate sent a warning shot, a message that they will not allow the government to be looted as a legacy project on his way out. Today's vote is the first tangible sign that the president's grip on his own party may be loosening, and the first moment we've seen the legislative branch reassert its constitutional authority over federal spending and oversight in this new term. But we must remain clear-eyed about the danger that still looms. A cornered president, publicly humiliated and financially penalized, is a dangerous force. Donald Trump does not handle defeat gracefully. He doesn't see this Senate vote as a check on power. He sees it as a betrayal. Watch closely over the next 48 hours. With the Kennedy Center takeover blocked and massive fines now on the table, his liquidity crisis has worsened. He needs money, and fast. When courts bar access to taxpayer funds and donors shut their wallets, where does a desperate president turn? To the unregulated shadows. This brings us back to the warning I issued about the crypto executive order. With traditional avenues blocked, we can expect a rapid acceleration of crypto schemes. New executive actions may be pushed to artificially inflate the value of digital assets held by him and his family. Emergency waivers could be granted to opaque foreign entities, possibly Russian or Gulf oligarchs, funneling money into his private ventures under the guise of investment. The fines imposed today are a victory for the rule of law, but they also raise the stakes, increasing the incentive for the president to put short-term cash ahead of American interests. We also have to consider the cultural stakes. The president targeted the Kennedy Center because he understands something crucial. Culture is upstream of politics. Control the story a nation tells itself, and you control the nation. He aimed to erase the legacy of John F. Kennedy, a legacy of civil rights, space exploration, and a commitment to peace, and replace it with a narrative rooted in grievance, isolationism, and authoritarianism. The Senate blocked his attempt to seize the building, but they cannot block the broader war he is waging on culture. We see it in our schools where books are being banned by the thousands. We see it in universities where federal funding is threatened for institutions that teach history the administration finds inconvenient. The Kennedy Center takeover was merely the most visible tip of the iceberg, a symbol. By defending that symbol, we have shown that resistance is possible. I want to speak directly to the citizens who have felt hopeless over the last year. I know how easy it is to feel like our institutions are failing us. I know how it felt to watch the Department of Government Efficiency dismantle the civil service and leave so many of us questioning whether the system still works. But look at today. Look at the scorecard. The president reached for a crown jewel of American culture, the Kennedy Center, and was stopped. Workers have even installed his name on the building after a board vote he engineered. But that move is now facing legal challenges because Congress alone has the authority to rename the national memorial the center was established to be. NBC4 Washington +1. And while the details are different from what some reports discuss publicly, there is ongoing congressional and legal pushback against these efforts to transform the institution. The Guardian. The fact remains, his attempt to reshape a symbol of our shared culture was met with resistance. He tried to divert power and influence into his own hands, and people pushed back. The system is bruised, but it is breathing. However, we cannot rest. There are urgent threats still before us. The impeachment trial for alleged wrongdoing in Venezuela, war-related matters, begins next week. The expansion of surveillance programs that collect American data remains active. And even as legal challenges around the Kennedy Center's renaming unfold, those fines and setbacks are not enough on their own. We should ask ourselves this: if the Senate was ready to push back against changing the name of a building, Will they be brave enough to protect the Constitution itself? That is the defining question of 2026. Today's setbacks for the president give me hope, but they do not give me comfort. I know what this kind of figure does when cornered. I've spent my career prosecuting fraudsters like him. When you hit them with a fine, they don't reform, they don't apologize, they double down. He will go on television tonight and claim the deep state and the radical left are trying to destroy American culture. He will insist the courts and lawmakers are biased. He will try to recast his actions as martyrdom. Do not fall for it. The facts are clear. He sought to take what belongs to the people, our heritage, our culture, our institutions, and make it his own. And people in positions of responsibility said, no, this is the momentum we need. We must take this victory and turn it into a civic renewal movement. We must demand that every senator who voted to defend the Kennedy Center also votes to uphold the Constitution next week. You cannot protect the building while acquitting those who threaten the Republic. The fines, the resistance, the legal challenges, they are a start. But the end of this chapter only comes when we restore integrity to the Oval Office and recommit to the principles that bind this nation together. Let this serve as a clear message to the administration. We are watching the money, we are watching the contracts, we are watching the executive orders, and we will not allow this country to be sold off piece by piece to feed egos. Tonight, the Kennedy Center stands, its name unchanged, its mission intact. Let that stand as a beacon of what's possible. If we can save one building from his grasp, we can save the Republic. But the work is far from over and the hour is late. I need you to stay engaged. I need you to examine the documents we are releasing on the Civic Renewal website, detailing the financial ties between World Liberty Financial and the proposed renovation contracts. Share them, talk about them, spread the truth.